First up is going to be Matt Steiger with the Wisconsin DNR, and he's going to be giving an overview of the St. Louis River Estuary area of concern. And then we're going to have a couple of polling questions that Beth will pop up in between people here, so we can just keep things going and keep everybody awake. I hope you all have a drink or something good to eat. Normally we still serve food at our events and maybe have a cash bar, but we don't have that this time. So everybody relax and enjoy the evening. And I'm Chris Eilers, the Executive Director of the St. Louis River Alliance. I'll be the MC tonight and try to keep things going. And we did have a little bit of a technical issue earlier. We're going to work around it, and everything will be fine. And so next is Matt Steiger with the overview of the St. Louis River Estuary area of concern.
All right, good evening. Is my audio and screen looking all right? Yes, thumbs up. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Unfortunately, we are virtual. We generally like to be able to mingle and spend plenty of time getting to know stakeholders in our area of concern, walking around to different stations, having a snack and a drink, and just being able to talk about questions, comments, and concerns. So unfortunately, we are adapting to the situation here, and just we're gonna put out some information on the progress that we've made in the last year. As I said, this is an annual event. It's my turn to discuss the progress for the agencies that are responsible for the area of concern this year, which is the folks listed on the slide here: myself from Wisconsin DNR, Barb Huberty, Minnesota Pollution Control, Rick Guitar, Fond du Lac Band, and Melissa Scholand, Minnesota DNR. So I'll jump right in. So tonight we're going to talk about the area of concern and its status. We have a lot of kind of acronym jargon that I'll try not to do too much of, but if there are questions on that type of thing, just let me know. I'll go through just a few of them quick here. We're going to talk about beneficial use impairments, or BUIs. We're going to talk about the kind of the overall progress, talk about an input opportunity that's coming up for folks to review our remedial action plan. And then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions. I know, our time, my time's going to be short because we've had a lot going on this year, but I'll try and get through it quickly and save time for questions. So hopefully most folks are up to date with a few of these terms. Area of concern will be AOC. The RAP is our remedial action plan. That's our kind of overall plan for addressing the impairments here in the St. Louis River. A BUI is a beneficial use impairment. Those are categories that we kind of put the issues that we're trying to solve into. A management action is a specific task, which can be a remediation project, a restoration project, or a study, or something along those lines. But that has been deemed necessary to address the impairment. And then GLRI is the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and that is a funding source, a federal funding source that has really helped boost our area of concern.
Matt, I wanted to just interrupt for just a second. We were going to take questions at the very end of the program for the panel discussion. So unless you want to take some questions at the end of your presentation, we'll wait on questions about everything till the very end. That's okay with you?
Yes, but please type them in the chat as we go so you don't forget them.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll keep moving along here. For those of you that may not be familiar or local, this is our Duluth Superior area, and the area of concern boundary is the shaded area. It includes the Nemadji River watershed, the lower 39 miles of the St. Louis River, and then a few miles out into Lake Superior and portions of the Fond du Lac Reservation. I want to make sure I hit this this topic because it's really important. We have our annual remedial action plan input opportunity. It begins tomorrow. There will be information posted on the Wisconsin DNR's website, and the feedback can be provided to me. This year, there won't be copies like posted at the libraries or anything, but it's going to be all online and by email. So hopefully you are signed up for notifications for our GovDelivery email messages. That is the way we put out information such as these opportunities and announcements for events like this. If you're not on that list, visit either the Minnesota or Wisconsin DNR website and just search St. Louis River Area of Concern. There should be instructions on there, or if you would like, just contact myself and we can get you on that list. I want to mention also some other great information resources. We've got a story map for restoration and remediation sites. That's on the Pollution Control Agency website. That's new and up to date. We also have kind of archived information, including BUI removal packages, older remedial action plans, and some of the videos and other documents posted on Wisconsin DNR's website. And then if you pay attention to social media, there will be posts and things of that nature frequently from the St. Louis River Alliance, as well as some information on our Wisconsin DNR or Minnesota social media pages. So follow all those. All right, so just to give you an overall snapshot of our progress from the last year, we are over halfway of our management actions. We have 13 remaining remediation projects for contaminated sediments, 13 remaining restoration projects, and 13 remaining other projects such as studies or assessments or data management. So that's a total of 80 actions. And this is just a kind of a pie chart showing where we've come in the last year. So this was 2019, and we've increased a little bit in our purple for 2020. So as I explained earlier, we have 9 impairments, and we remove those impairments as we complete actions, and as we complete them, we get to check them off as we go, and then final at the end will be a delisting. So as we move forward, we have removed 3. We did remove the excessive loading of sediment and nutrients impairment in 2020, and we are looking forward to the degraded fish and wildlife populations impairment in 2021. The rest of our impairments, we've got plenty of actions to work on, so they are kind of all lining up in that 2025 and beyond category. We're thinking a few of them are going to go a little further out than 2025 because of data collection and recovery, especially for fish consumption advice. It's a really good feeling to remove an impairment. This year in April, we did remove the excessive loading of sediment and nutrients impairment. There were 5 management actions in that one that were completed. We had a public comment period, but we did cancel the in-person public meeting due to the COVID this year, unfortunately. Instead, we still made presentations and posters and documents for that public meeting, and we posted them online and had a public comment period. So that is a success for us to celebrate in 2020. At this point, I'm just going to go through some updates on the impairments, kind of in order of, as they were on that removal chart. So our degraded fish and wildlife populations, right now we're focusing on some sturgeon studies, piping plover, and common tern, and that is the subject for um, our panel here. So I will kind of defer a lot of that information, but the good news is it's looking good for removing this impairment. We did some testing and studies on the sturgeon as far as if we could see if there were any legacy contaminants affecting sturgeon, and the the results from that do not indicate egg mortality or reproductive impairment. So we are planning to move forward with BUI removal. I'm going to move kind of quickly through these projects, so if you have questions, jot them down. Another one of our projects for this impairment is the interstate island habitat restoration for common tern. Right now, as in a day or two ago, the island has been expanded and lifted. A new common tern nesting colony site has been improved, and that was led by Minnesota DNR, and it was a joint project because this does run right through the state line, runs right through the island. So look forward to hearing some more on terns from Fred. Piping plover site was another large dredge material use site that in Wisconsin that we built about 14 acres of habitat. The bulk of the work was done in 2019, and we did complete some of the work in 2020. It was led by Wisconsin DNR, and it was directed to create nesting habitat for piping plovers. So that's another completed project. All right, I'm switching impairments now. We're moving on to the restrictions on dredging or contaminated sediment impairment. This is Mud Lake West. It's a Minnesota pollution control led project. It was decided that no further action would be necessary based on samples and a bioaccumulation study. So they have a remedial decision summary that is in preparation and should be released this year. And I believe a more of a habitat related project is being worked on instead of a remedial project. The ASCON Duluth Seaway Port Authority SLIP is another one that has been completed this year. It just was announced that it was completed within the last week or so. I think that's correct. About 700 cubic yards were removed, and then they capped 2.2 acres within the SLIP. It was a $4.5 million project led by Pollution Control Agency. Another success on the Minnesota side. Moving on, another Minnesota project here is the ponds behind Erie Pier. So if you're able to see my cursor, I believe it's this, the ponds under the highway there. There's approximately 45,000 cubic yards of sediments that are contaminated, and the design is in development. I believe the alternative selected is a dredge with off-site disposal. It's a $16 million project, and that will begin potentially in 2021 and 2022. A joint state Minnesota and Wisconsin remedial project is Munger Landing. Some of you might know it as Clyde Avenue. There's about 120,000 cubic yards of contaminated sediment in this area. It's a large site. There will be dredging and offsite disposal, that is planned to happen in 2023. Funding estimates are $19.3 million. And you can see there's quite a few partners at that site. The moving up the river here, the Scanlon Reservoir is a project that has 60,000 cubic yards of contaminated sediment. It's in the 40-acre reservoir. It is a carbon amendment, and then sand applied over the amendment is the remedial design. That is a $5 million project planned for 2022. So moving over to Wisconsin remedial actions, we had some completions this year. 2 of the potential sites were no further action after some additional sampling and assessment. We also did characterization this year in June and July of 2020. We collected 158 samples in the Wisconsin sites. Those are being assessed right now and hopefully making some more remedial decisions early 21. And then our biggest success this year was that the Howards Bay project began. The navigational dredging portion is almost complete for this year. This is a picture of the first bucket of dredge material being removed out of Howards Bay. And again, that was another project with lots of partnerships between the city, DNR, and EPA administered Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. And just an overview here, I have a map showing our remedial sites and their status. We have 6 sites in the works here. Most of these got some sampling this year where additional information is being looked at. But as you can see, we have a site called Clough Island Wetlands, and then a bunch of slips that are being evaluated for remedial action, targeted for 2023 or 2024. And then I'll move on to the habitat BUI. This is a large project that's under construction, Kingsbury Bay Restoration. It was cleared out from the accumulated sediments, and they're using those sediments to restore Grassy Point. This is a Minnesota DNR-led project. And this shows some pictures of Grassy Point. They have constructed some of their project features here. I know that they're taking care of wood waste as well as non-native vegetation and creating additional natural shoreline and using those Kingsbury Bay sediments. I think it is rolling over into 2021, the construction that is, and again, the Minnesota DNR is leading that project. Another kind of update on some of our previous dredge projects, dredge material reuse projects are 21st Avenue and 40th Avenue West. Those are Minnesota Pollution Control led projects. They are putting some biomedium on some of these sites to try to help get the vegetation to grow a little better in those habitat features. A large project that is United States Environmental Protection Agency led is the U.S. Steel and Spirit Lake cleanup project. It has a number of different remedy options here in these different management units. The important and exciting piece is that the upland construction began in 2020, and it will be there will be mixture of dredging and capping going on in the in-water portions in 21 and 22. $75 million project. This is a upcoming project. It is Perch Lake Restoration If folks are familiar with the Highway 23 corridor that runs along the river, this is a old oxbow that used to have more connection with the estuary. That's what we're looking to do, is revitalize that connection and get some better bathymetry in there. They're starting the sampling and design this year, and it's led by Minnesota DNR and Minnesota Land Trust doing project management. And as I said before, there is a restoration project in Mud Lake that is the design had started this year, and it is led by Minnesota DNR. The goals there are similar to other projects where we're looking at that shallow sheltered bay habitat and addressing wood waste and restoring wetlands. So running into Wisconsin projects for our habitat impairment, the Little Balsam Creek project is phase 1 is complete, and we are working on phase 2, which is one culvert crossing. Phase 1 was 3 culvert crossings. This is working to connect 5 miles of cold water class 1 trout stream in the Nemadji River watershed. So that's a picture of some of the conditions before and after. We also have a project in right across from Barker's Island in what we call Pickle Pond. This is a remediation and restoration project. There are some contaminated sediments in this pond. We are in design, and we're hoping to start constructing a remedial project with some habitat features in 2021. A project that is AOC wide, estuary wide on both Minnesota and Wisconsin waters is wild rice restoration. We have been working very closely with the Fond du Lac Band and 1854 Treaty Authority and the Alliance to seed wild rice in the best available habitats here in the estuary. This year was a good year for seed. We seeded over 14,000 pounds on 130 some acres. So a really good year for continuing our seeding efforts. We do plan to do this yearly until 2024.
Hey Matt, you've got about 2 minutes left.
At least through area of concern. Okay. Moving on to the degradation of benthos, which are the sediment dwelling organisms, bugs and aquatic vegetation. This is just a kind of an assessment impairment where we have to collect a lot of data at our restoration sites and make sure that the conditions improved in the macroinvertebrates and the aquatic vegetation. So we're doing a lot of sampling as it is now, and more to come in the next few years as projects wrap up. And then the last impairment here to talk about is the fish consumption advisory. Right now, we're working with local EPA researchers up at the Duluth TED Lab, technology, I forget what it sounds. The name has changed recently. But the Duluth Lab to do PCB and mercury studies. We are hoping to collect more data here in 2021 and work with our technical team to evaluate that data and hopefully solve some of our fish consumption advisory issues here before 2025. So with that, I will conclude the fast-paced area of concern information blast. Just want to quick say again, thanks for attending. We will see you in person next year. We definitely like the in-person events much better, and I hope I can answer your questions here later on. Thanks.
Matt, do you have Melissa's photo? There you go. Beth has got a poll for us.
All right, folks. So where do you think this picture was taken? Go ahead and take a guess. Give you a minute or so to take a good look, see where that is. All right, we've got about half of everyone who has voted so far.
I'm not even seeing a poll.
Oh, as a host or a co-host, you would not be polled. Just so you're
All right.
you're okay.
So just so we know, the people who are speaking tonight won't see the poll.
You should be able to see it, just not vote in it.
Nope.
Okay. All right, so we're going to close the poll in about 10 seconds. So get your vote in if you haven't yet. And we'll see where we ended up. All right, ending the poll in 3, 2, 1. All
Thanks,
right,
Beth.
let's share the results. All right, Chris, can you see the results?
No.
Okay. Well, the most popular answer, about 55% of the polling audience said Grassy Point. Are they right?
Melissa, are they right?
Yes, they're most definitely right. Good job.
Woohoo, all right.
All right.
Gold
Good
star.
job, everybody.
All right, excellent.
Okay.
All right.
Should I stop sharing? Okay.
You don't have to. I think I got it. All right. So again, I'm Chris Eilers with the St. Louis River Alliance, and I'm just going to give a really brief update of things that we've been working on since we've had to cancel all of our events in 2020. And we're really happy to be able to do this one and figure out ways around it. Seems like everybody's figuring out ways around things. So I'm just going to start off by actually showing a video that we had made actually last year, and we've got a few videos out, but this actually gives a really good overview of who we are as an organization, and I'm just going to let it go for now.
The St. Louis River Estuary, our home, once an abundant source of life, shimmering with fish and wildlife, birds and wild rice so thick, it was described as hayfields on the water. It runs 192 miles through rare bogs, spills over rocky falls, and widens into a unique freshwater estuary. The river becomes Lake Superior. People have been drawn to the abundance for centuries, and it has generously provided for its inhabitants throughout the ages. But development and industrialization dimmed our connection to the source of life, and the river was abused and neglected. The life was choked out. By the 1970s, devastation of waterways had degraded the quality of life across the nation, and the people started to rise up and demand change. The Clean Water Act was passed, and the St. Louis River Estuary was designated as one of 43 areas of concern around the Great Lakes in dire need of restoration. The St. Louis River Alliance was born out of a group of concerned citizens that helped bring people together to clean up the St. Louis River. And for decades now, citizens, agencies, and partners have joined forces to care for the river. While there is much left to be done, the river is reflecting that care back to us. Rekindled relationships to our source of life is sparking renewal and healing our communities. We are stronger, And we are finding new ways to discover how we can live together and thrive, and what it means to care for our home. The cleaner water is generating a sense of hope, and people are remembering their connection. The original vision of the shimmering river that turns into Lake Superior is reborn. We invite you to come home to the river.
Okay. So that's who we are. You know, we started as a Citizens Action Committee, and we are now a nonprofit, and we still work to help the progress of the area of concern. And we also have some other projects and that I'm just going to talk about right now real quick. We have something massive to celebrate right now. We've been working on the St. Louis River Estuary National Water Trail for many years now, under the direction of the city of Duluth and a bunch of other stakeholders. And finally, the application had been sent in 2017 and suggested by the or nominated by the National Park Service to be a national water trail, and it's been sitting at the Department of the Interior for a long time. And I think it's been 3 weeks ago now that they actually signed it. So we're really happy to celebrate that with you all tonight. And what that means is just more, it'll be entered in a national database, and there's all kinds of things that will go along with that. That I don't have time to talk about right now, but we are continuing to lead the project as one of our programs to help manage the water trail, and we have a management committee that we're working with to kind of guide the master plan, and so we'll just continue to work on that. But there are maps available right now. They are outside of our office in the DeWitt Sites Building, Suite 208. Our office is not open right now. We are not working from the office yet, but you can get your maps there, and we will also have a list on our website on where you can get these maps besides there. So celebrate with us on that. Another thing, here's our other list of programs here. So the water trail is one, and that is self-funded, and we raise money to do that. And we also have a small grant from the coastal program from Minnesota DNR to work on specific tasks. We also spent time this last year, which for 8 years now, we've been working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife on piping plover monitoring and outreach. And so we did some of that this year. We didn't do as much as we normally do. And also we have taken on the establishment phase, doing some maintenance work for the Wisconsin DNR for the new habitat, which you'll hear more about later, out on Wisconsin Point. And hopefully we'll get some piping plovers nesting out there. It's a beautiful new nesting area for them. It's got all the good features that they like. And so we are working with a team on that. We also continue to work on our area of concern outreach through a contract with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And that just means doing things like this and some of the other things that we normally do, like our September boat ride that we do on the Vista Star. And we've got other things coming up here that we will be revamping to work with however we need to with COVID. Unfortunately, some of that might mean changing some things, but we will find ways of reaching out to you guys and connecting people to the river. So the other thing that we did this summer that we were still able to do is to plant wild rice at Clough Island. And we've done that 5 years now. This year we did 500 pounds. Last year we did 2,500 pounds, and we do that through volunteer, through our members. This year we had to actually do staff do that because we couldn't have a volunteer event. So those are just some of the things that we're working on, and we will continue to work on. So our main goal is to connect people to the river, and we are a membership-based organization. And right now in the month of November, we are doing a membership drive, and it's been pretty successful so far. People really are connected to the river. And I think that, you know, with a lot of the challenges that we've had this year, one thing that I know that people have been able to do is be outside and enjoy the outdoors and really keep our sanity through really connecting to the outdoors. And in our area, that is a big part of that is the river and exploring those wild places along the river and really helping us heal and giving us strength through these challenging times. And so, you know, investing in the river right now is, as you can see, we've had a lot of success with the cleanup, and we're getting closer and closer to finishing a lot of those cleanup projects, and we're able to enjoy a cleaner river as we move forward. And we really want people to get out and connect to the water bodies in their areas. And so this is one way we can do it. You can do that through the Alliance. You can invest in the river through the Alliance and become a part of something good. And you can grab your maps and get out there and enjoy the river. We'll be having some events whenever we can do them through the COVID guidelines, and just keep going out to the river though.
1 minute warning, Chris.
Okay, well, that's perfect because I am done, I think.
Look
And
at
I
that,
just want to
perfect.
encourage people to go to our website, and I think Alyssa can post a link in the chat for people to check things out on our website. We've been busy revamping our website, and we've got several other videos that we've been putting out. You can find us on Facebook and our website. So go ahead and check things out. We've got some great things on there that are visual that'll kind of help keep the interest going through the winter as things freeze up. So I am gonna try to get back to the meeting here.
And if you'd like, Chris, I can go ahead and launch a quick poll for us.
Yes, go ahead and do the poll.
All right, another quick poll. Test our skills. So the question is, how many acres are in the St. Louis River Estuary? How many acres? Oh, I think this group knows their stuff.
Yes.
3/4 of them say 12,000. So 120,000 is a close second. But just about everyone is picking 12,000. All right, I'm going to end the poll in just a few seconds here. So quick, get that guess in. Nobody guessed 120. I'm shocked. All right, closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, let's take a look at those results. All right, about 80% said 12,000. So are they correct?
Yes, they are. This is a very
right.
educated bunch. I was bragging to Beth earlier about how the people who come to our events are very well-informed and educated people and know a lot about the river. So thank you.
Yeah, they sure do.
Thanks for that. And so, yeah, I'm looking at everybody. I changed my view so I can see more people's faces. So thanks a lot, you guys, for coming. It's so good to see some of your faces and see your names, even if I can't see your faces. It seems like forever since we've been able to be together. And so these kind of things really help, don't they? Next up is Reena Bowman, and she is a biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and is based out of Bloomington, Minnesota. Reena is the service's piping plover recovery coordinator for Minnesota and Wisconsin. And Reena also works with several partners in the St. Louis River Estuary on various conservation planning and habitat restoration efforts, including us. She has been our grant manager for, I don't know, this is 3 years now, hasn't it been, Reena?
Yeah, it's been 3 years.
Oh, anyway, go ahead, Reena.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen, and while I work through that process, I just want to thank everyone for and Chris and the planning committee to give me the opportunity to present today. And I'm really excited about the turnout we have. Let's see. Can everyone see my presentation?
Not yet.
Okay. How about now?
Yes, you got it.
Okay, got it now. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to present today. And this evening, I would like to provide a general overview of piping plovers, their current status, the Fish and Wildlife Service and partners recovery efforts, and the significance of the St. Louis River Estuary in the overall piping plover recovery effort. So I just want to start with some background. So piping plovers are a small shorebird. They're bigger than a chickadee, smaller than a robin. They're dry sand colored on the back and white below, as you can kind of see here. During the breeding season, adults have a black forehead band between the eyes, and then a single black band around the neck. The legs are orange during the breeding. You can see also during the breeding season, the base of the bill turns orange. There's the males versus females. So you can see here that the males typically have a sharper contrast between the orange and the black, while females have more of a blended type of transition between the orange and black in the bill. The male's neckband is typically thicker than the female's. Also, the male brow band goes all the way to the eyes, versus the females, they kind of start, they don't all the way go down to the eyes. This is a really good example of a contrast. There's like a lot of blending between the two, so it can be really difficult to tell males versus females. These two pictures are a very good example of two very stark contrasts, but typically that's the difference. Piping plovers can also be confused with a lot of different other shorebirds that are typically in the same area around the same time. The first one is the semi-palmated plover. So as I mentioned, that piping plovers typically have like a dry sand color. And so the easiest thing to think about is that semi-palmated plovers are more of a wet sand color. So this is like a wet sand versus this is like a dry sand color. Also, killdeer are also can be confused with piping plovers. They nest in the same area. As you notice that piping plovers have the orange legs, and the legs are a little bit shorter than the killdeer. Also, there's the lack of this orange bill, and then killdeer have two neckbands, versus piping plovers have one neckband. The other commonly mistaken shorebird is the spotted sandpiper. Spotted sandpipers have a much longer neck and a much longer beak and a much longer, much longer legs, and they don't have the same coloration. So just in general, just to kind of give an overview of piping plovers. So there's three different subpopulations of piping plovers. So we have the Great Lakes Plains population. We have the Great Lakes population, and then we have the Atlantic Coast population. So all three of them are characterized differently. The Great Plains population and the Great Atlantic Coast population are federally listed as threatened, while the Great Lakes population is federally listed as endangered. All three populations do, however, overwinter in this southeast area of the United States and the Bahamas. The Great Lakes portion of the piping plover population, they typically nest in wide open sandy beaches they need sparse vegetation cover and cobble and gravel pans. And the reason for the cobble and gravel pans is that they nest right on the surface of the sand. So they create these scrapes on the surface of the sand, and they line their nest, it's called a nest cup. They line it with shells and gravel that they would pick up and actually like put on the bottom here. And typically piping plover pairs typically have 3 to 4 eggs. Most likely it's 4 eggs is typically what they usually lay. Just thinking about the chronology of when piping plovers come back to the Great Lakes to breed. It's a little bit later in the Lake Superior region compared to Lake Michigan. but typically they arrive in April or May. In the Lake Michigan area, they sometimes arrive and there's still snow on the ground. But in the Lake Superior region, it's typically a little bit later, like end of May or end of April. The courtship and pair formation, it usually happens around after that. Nest laying and incubation happens in May-June timeframe. Chick hatching and rearing usually happens in the June-July timeframe. And after the chicks hatch, they usually fledge, which means that, when they're ready to fly after 23 days of hatching. So historically, the Great Lakes Piping Plover population was distributed across all of the Great Lakes. There were pairs, this is just a representation of where historically the Great Lakes Piping Plovers would nest. It's across all of this big region. It doesn't include Canada. I mean, there was nests all in Canada as well. But in the late 1880s, the population kind of really was only limited to a few nesting sites in Michigan. And at that time, the piping plover was listed as the Great Lakes Piping Plover population was federally listed as endangered in 1985. There's a lot of different reasons why the Great Lakes population was listed as endangered and the causes of decline. Mainly, partly due to shoreline development. There's a lot of hardening of shoreline, a lot of recreational development, beach recreation, and increased predator populations, which also went in line with the beach recreation aspect. When there's more beach recreation, there's also a lot more gulls and ravens and things like that come along with that. So the Fish and Wildlife Service has, since the listing of the Great Lakes Piping Plover population, the Fish and Wildlife Service has developed a really extensive recovery program and has been working with partners to implement that program. So the first recovery, there's different aspects of it. The first one is to locate and monitor piping plover nesting pairs. So we have monitors that will, early in the season before the piping plovers arrive, they will be out there and monitoring and looking for the plovers and documenting when they arrive and trying to identify the nesting pairs. The second thing is that, so when the monitors, identify a nest, we typically put up a exclosure to help prevent, this is a predator exclosure. So it's really intended to prevent any mammalian or avian predators from, depreding on the nest. The piping plover pairs are able to, and chicks are able to come in and out of the exclosure. They just hop right in, just come right out. Like you put it up and they're within 5 minutes, they just go right back in there. So it's been very successful, and they've been, there's been some research done that it made a remarkable difference in the number of the success of the piping plover. The second thing is to protect and restore habitat. So, piping plovers and all shorebirds are very sensitive to disturbance, and there's more than just that nesting location. And so the other part of it is a part of the recovery program is to protect and restore habitat. So there's, psychological fencing. There's, depending on the site, there's different rules and regulations, but it's really about giving them the space that they need, giving the wildlife the space that they need to share that with the people. The other aspect of piping plover recovery is banding. So all piping plovers are banded, and they all have a unique band combination, and that really helps in the recovery efforts, and in the sense that we can individually track individual piping plovers. So we know where they were born, we know where they go to winter, we know when they come back, and that really helps with population dynamics. It helps a lot of different aspects of recovery. And so, case in point, so here is red. That is what piping plover monitors affectionately call her. She is a piping plover that was that breeds at Cat Island in Lower Green Bay. She is named Red because there were 2 red bands here. Red was born in Wilderness State Park in Michigan in 2015. She started breeding the first time in Cat Island in Lower Green Bay in 2017, and has bred there ever since. And she's the first one to come back in Lower Green Bay. Actually, one of the first piping plovers to come back in all the Great Lakes. She spends her winters in Cumberland Island in Georgia. So we have this information because we banned them. And so we can tell that story, and we know where they're from, where they go, when they come back. It's the same thing. It's really satisfying. When she comes back, it's like a celebration almost. So in Wisconsin, we have two active breeding sites in Wisconsin. We have the Cat Island Lower Green Bay site, and we have the Apostle Islands National Lakeshore. But historically, in the St. Louis Estuary, piping plovers used to nest at Minnesota Point and Barker's Island. There was intermittent nesting through 1986. Currently, piping plovers are using the St. Louis Estuary for stopover habitat. But putting in perspective, where did they go? So, like I mentioned, like part of the decline in piping plovers can be attributed to some of the habitat changes, habitat loss, things like that. But also part of it could be attributed to the fact that like the population shrunk. So the population shrunk to the core Michigan sites. And now as the population, if you see here, this was when maybe they were nesting in the estuary. Population has grown quite a bit. And there's because of that, there's new nesting sites outside of Michigan in the last 4 or 5 years. So we've got Montrose Beach in Illinois, the famous, pair that we all hear about. We've got the Apostle Islands. In the last 2 years, they've had pairs on 3 different islands in the Apostle Islands. Cat Island, that was only a nesting site since 2016. They've also had pairs in the Prescott Island in Pennsylvania since last 3 years. So the population is expanding from that core Michigan population. So that gives us Wisconsin Point and the St. Louis Estuary a whole nother, it gives it a different perspective. So this Wisconsin Point bird sanctuary project, as Chris and Matt had mentioned before, was completed in 2019. It's going to be adding 14 acres of new nesting and foraging habitat for pine plovers. And as the population expands outside of that core Michigan range, this is a great timing for this project to be completed. So in the St. Louis River Estuary, there's a ton of partners and a ton of work that has gone into the efforts here, and from federal to state to nonprofit to city. There's a lot of people that are really interested in it and have contributed to this project. But there's also a lot of community involvement too. So just in as this Wisconsin Point project has been completed, and as we move forward, there's a lot of things that the community members can do. Avoiding the closed areas and giving wildlife that space to have that, when they're fenced off, keeping pets on leashes, cleaning up garbage, which, like as I mentioned, could attract nuisance wildlife. Yeah. So again, thanks, and I will wait for any questions in the panel.
Thanks, Reena. We have another poll we can jump to quick. If you want to pull that up, Beth.
All right. My favorite poll: which one of these St. Louis River Estuary activities is your favorite? I know that I was kind of torn between a couple of them that I would do if I was close by. But my favorite is taking the lead. So paddling it's a very slim lead, about 40% paddling, and a very good distribution. So a lot of these are good. We do have something else as an option. So feel free to pop your something else into the chat, because I'm interested to see what other fun activities you have. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the polling in just a few seconds here. All right, 3, 2, 1. Let's show these results. Okay, so about 36% said paddling, so kayaking, canoeing, stand-up paddleboarding. Hiking, 19%, bird watching, 17%, so those were really close. Probably do both at the same time. Fishing at 15%, and 13 at something else. So, photography is one of those something else. Thanks, John, for popping that in. All right, very cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Beth. Is Fred still with us?
Fred is here.
Oh, okay, perfect. Fred Strand is up next, and he is a former Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and Minnesota Department of Natural Resources employee. He worked on wildlife and non-game management programs in Western Lake Superior since the mid-1970s. He's got a fixture around here. A lot of people know him. One of his passions is Common Terns. He says it is a privilege and an honor to help manage and monitor the 2 Lake Superior Common Tern colonies. Fred, so we cannot see Fred, but Beth is going to pull up the presentation, and you will just hear Fred talking. And Fred, if you have a poor connection and you get disconnected for some reason, you can go back to your original invitation and call in.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Fred.
Well, I'll start talking, and do we know if it's working for other people or not, the audio?
We can hear
Sounds
you.
good.
Okay. Well, since my camera isn't working, I can't screen share, so I have a slide presentation, and Beth, you'll be advancing the slides for me?
I sure will.
Okay. Well, you'll hear the word next quite a few times as I talk.
Sounds good.
Here we go. Common tern population is another one next of the degraded wildlife populations in the AOC. I will present information on habitat restoration work that has been done to restore and improve. Next. Nesting and young rearing habitat for common terns in the AOC. Next. And on the common tern population. Next. Next. Common terns have a very widespread global distribution, and in some places they are abundant, hence the descriptive word common in their name. Next. But they are not abundant or common in Great Lakes states. In the first half of the 20th century, there were an estimated 21,000 pairs in the Great Lakes states. Today, there are about 9,000 to 10,000 pairs. Reasons for the population decline in the Great Lakes states include habitat losses due to human uses for industry, housing, and recreation, habitat losses due to natural vegetation establishment and competition from other animals for the same habitat, predation. Some predators are wider spread and more abundant today than they were historically, chemical contamination of the environment, especially food sources, and changes in water levels which have flooded or destroyed nesting and young rearing habitat. The common tern population in the AOC have experienced all of these. Next. The recovery goal for common terns in the AOC is to have a 10-year average of 200 nesting pairs with a reproductive rate of 0.8 to 1.1 young fledged per nest. This goal is based on the historical number of terns which have nested in Estuary and on the reproductive rate or fledging rate needed to maintain a stable population. Next. Common terns are a small ground nesting colonial water. Next. Colonial simply means that many birds nest together, usually very close together. Next. Their nesting and young herring habitat requirements are islands or peninsulas. Next. With sparse vegetation. Next. That are free of predators. Next. And free or relatively free of nesting habitat competitors. Next. That are located in large bodies of water. Next. Their food is almost exclusively small fish which are caught near the surface of water, including spot-tail shiners. Next. Common shiners. Next. And smelt. Next. There are only 2 common tern colonies in the entire Lake Superior Basin. Next. One colony is in Chequamegon Bay at the end of a former ore dock. Next. The end of the ore dock has been rebuilt and repurposed for common tern nesting and young rearing habitat, and it is Ashland Tern Island. Next. Interstate Island is the location of the other Lake Superior common tern colony. It was created in the 1930s by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for material dredged from shipping channels in the St. Louis River. It has been repurposed for colonial waterbird and shorebird habitat. Next. In the late 1980s, the Minnesota DNR removed most of the woody vegetation from the island. Terns moved to the island from Wisconsin Point and the Duluth Port Authority area where they were attempting to nest, mostly unsuccessfully. All of the common terns in the estuary have nested at Interstate Island since 1990. Next. Interstate Island is also home to a gull colony with about 14,000 pair of ring-billed nesting on the island. Next. And about 35 pair of herring gulls nesting there. Gulls are a nesting and young rearing habitat competitor of common terns. They use the same type of habitat as terns use for nesting. They return earlier in the spring and begin nesting earlier than terns. And with their very large population, they literally use all of the otherwise suitable tern nesting habitat. We do 2 things to control or manage gull nesting in the tern nesting area on Interstate Island. Next, we place a string grid over the tern nesting area. The string grid is at parallel rows of string placed 4 feet apart at waist height. Gulls, being larger and not as agile flyers, can't easily fly through the string grid, but some do and attempt to nest in the tern nesting area. We destroy those nests. We have a federal permit which allows us to destroy gull nests in the tern nesting area. Next. Terns are smaller and more agile flyers than gulls and can easily fly through the string grid and nest under it. Next. Sparse vegetation is managed by pulling of the vegetation or by herbicide treatment. Next. Predators have been a problem. We have had predation by a short-tailed weasel, next, and by a Franklin's ground squirrel. In both cases, the individual was trapped and removed. Next, the biggest problem, basically the predation problem, is with ring-billed gulls, which eat both tern eggs and young. Next, all of this work, managing for sparse vegetation, predator control, and gull management has worked. Terns are successfully nesting and raising young on Interstate Island. But rising water levels and storm surges have caused erosion and flooding over large portions of the island. This has reduced the size of the island, which has also reduced the size of the area where gulls can nest. With less space for gulls to nest, more of them attempt to nest in the tern nesting area. Also, the higher water levels cause some of the tern nesting area to become damp or wet, as much of the tern nesting area was basically as the same height as the river water level. The Interstate Island Avian Habitat Restoration Plan was developed to address all of these issues. This restoration project will mitigate legacy impacts, restore beneficial uses, and contribute to the delisting of the AOC. The Minnesota Land Trust is managing the Interstate Island Avian Restoration Project for the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and partners, including Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, the University of Minnesota Natural Resources Research Institute, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Next. One of the plan was implemented in the fall of 2015 when the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources increased the elevation of the tern nesting area and built a protective rim around the perimeter of the tern nesting area. Note the flooded areas on the north side of the island in this picture. Next. In the spring of 2016, before the terns returned, we replaced the string grid, driftwood, and cobble. To help ensure that terns would nest in the restored habitat and not attempt to nest elsewhere, we used both audio and visual stimulants to attract terns to the newly restored habitat. Next, we placed a sound system which played tern calls. Next, and we placed made by Bill Madcheski in the tern nesting area. Both of these attract and stimuli worked. Terns nested in the restored habitat. Next. In fact, the very first nest was right next to one of the decoys. Next. The decoys were so realistic that except for the water splattered sand, almost indistinguishable from live terns. Thank you, Bill. Next. This work greatly improved the nesting and young rearing habitat for terns, but it did not provide more nesting habitat for adults. Next. In the spring of this year, phase 2 of the project was completed. It stabilized the shoreline and raised the height of the island around the nesting area, much of which was underwater as seen in this picture. Next. To accomplish this, 70,000 cubic yards of sand was brought to the island. Next. This drone picture of the island after the work was completed. Next. 3 of the plan implemented this fall further increased the height of the tern nesting area and increased the size of the island. Next. Cobble and driftwood was distributed. Next. And a new chain link fence was constructed for the tern nesting area. The gull deterrent string grid will be replaced next spring. Next. And the size of the island was increased by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers placement of materials dredged from river navigation channels. Next, now moving on to the terns. Most common terns reach maturity and breed and nest for the first time when they are 3 years old. They return in early May and begin egg laying by mid-May. The number of nesting pairs is monitored by marking each nest with a uniquely numbered marker and monitoring the nest about once every 5 days until the fate of the nest is determined. This provides us with the annual breeding population measurement, the peak number of nests counted. Next, the normal clutch size is 3 eggs. Incubation takes 21 days. Next, the chicks grow very quickly. Here's about an old chick. Next, by 25 days of age, they are adult size and can fly well. The 2 birds on the right sides are adult sized chicks. Next, to monitor annual productivity, chicks are banded as soon as possible after they hatch with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service leg band. We recapture the chicks about once every 5 days to determine how many live until they are fledged, that is, until they can fly. Next. This provides us with the number of young produced, the number of young fledged annually. Using this data with the peak nest count gives us a measurement of the annual productivity, the number of young per nest. Next. Next. The adult population is monitored by capturing them during the incubation period with a wire box trap. Next. The 5-sided trap is placed over the nest and is propped up with a stick attached to a string. Next, when the birds to the nest, the string is pulled to drop the trap over the birds. Next, unbanded birds are banded with a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service band. For previously banded birds, the band number is recorded. Banding and recapturing information provides us with colony recruitment information. At each Lake Superior colony, about 6% of the adults nesting there were hatched there, while 10% were hatched at the other Lake Superior colony, and 25% were hatched at some other non-Lake Superior colony. It also provides us with age information. The average age of the birds is 8 to 10 years old, and it also provides us with lung information. The oldest encountered bird was 25 years old. Next, the common tern population has been monitored at Interstate Island since 1989. Solid blue line is the annual peak nest count. The dotted blue line shows the 32-year population trend. Next, the population is from a low of 81 pairs in 1989, when some of the birds were attempting to nest at Wisconsin Point, to a high of 302 pairs in 2011. Next, the year average is 180 nesting pairs. Next, the number of young fledged annually varies substantially. In years with significant predation, such as 2006, 2012, and 2014, very few to no young. In 2011, there was prolonged cold and wet weather at the peak of hatching in mid-June, which caused significant mortality of newly hatched chicks. In years with high productivity, there was minimal predation and very favorable weather conditions from mid to the end of June during the peak of hatching. Next.
And this is your 2-minute warning, and then I'll go to the next one. Thanks.
The long-term average productivity has been 0.85 young fledged per nest. Next, in the last 10 years, the number of nesting pairs has been on a downward trend. Next, with an average of 165 nesting pairs. Next, the number of young fledged is variable, with no young fledged in 2012 and 2014 due to predation, and with good productivity in several other years. Next, the average productivity for 10 years has been 0.72 young fledged per nest. Next, while we have not achieved the 10-year recovery goal for common terns in the AOC, I am optimistic that with all of the recent habitat restoration work that has been completed, that the common tern population in the AOC will increase. Next, but it will take several more years for the population to achieve the recovery goal. Next, we've got our strong backs and hard hats supporting the AOC common tern population.
All right. Thanks, Fred. That was great.
Thank you. We have just one little technical thing here. I need to, Beth, I think Alyssa will not be able to read the question. So if you could go back, and I just want to thank our speakers for everything. And little side note here, Bill Majewski is with us right here, and he's the one who carved the, everybody knows Bill. He's a longtime original SLRA member, was our president for a long time. He's also carved a lot of birds. So thanks, Bill. He also carved a bunch of piping plover decoys for us as well. So he's been busy carving birds for us. So we are done with our presentation part, and we're going to move into a panel discussion. And so Beth is going to pin the presenters to the top here. And then I'm wondering if Lorraine is still with us. If you could unmute yourself and say yes. I can't see everybody.
Chris, I think Lorraine may have had to step
Okay.
out.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, I think she had to leave.
Okay, so do we have our presenters pinned then?
I'm just looking for, I lost you in the shuffle, so I've got a
Yeah,
couple
I
of us
know there's a
pinned.
lot of people up
There
here.
you
So
are.
And Lorraine did give me some, she emailed a response to one of the questions about Munger Landing. So I
okay, good.
can
Thank
read
you.
that when we get to that one.
Good.
All right, I've got one last person to pin. Ooh, looking for Rick. Where'd he go?
So if you have questions, you can go ahead and start typing them in if you haven't already. And we still have quite a few participants with us, so hopefully you guys have some good questions. And I see a couple of good ones out there right now.
Mhm.
So Beth, if you want to like start reading, when I think Deanna was the first one who started.
Yeah, absolutely. So Deanna wrote, I've heard a few different reports about the source or sources of sediment contamination at Munger Landing. If there's any information that could be shared on that. I think that might be a question for Matt.
Actually, that's one that I will field, I think.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So Lorraine Leto with the Pollution Control Agency is the one leading the contaminated sediment sites for the PCA, and she had to leave, but she emailed me a response, so I can relay what she said, but I think any further follow-up, you'd have to go to Lorraine for that. But she said, we do consider the contaminants at Munger Landing to be from legacy sources, like most of the rest of the AOC. The MPCA and the EPA are working with a private voluntary party to investigate potential upland source of PCB contamination at the Munger Landing site. We are still in the process of investigating the extent and source of that contamination right now and should have more information to share in early 2021.
Great, thank you. All right, and then Andrew has a question. This is a good one. How can Duluth area residents, especially underemployed people from marginalized communities, gain employment or other income from these multi-million-dollar projects happening in their neighborhood? Seems like the Minnesota DNR has some goals for equity in contracting that could apply here. A good question, Andrew.
Yeah, it's a good question and an important topic. You know, I don't have a specific answer for some of the points here, but I do know. So as far as our contracting practices go, you know, we are held to state contracting requirements, and you know, the competitive bidding and things like that. So you know, companies that are performing the work, some are more local and some are from other states and other areas, but you know, we do go through that contracting process in our state statutes. I mean, one thing to mention, we do work with the Alliance on a few projects, and some universities and you know, entities like that. So there are, I guess, the local EPA lab and other entities that are doing more research or data collection type work. You know, we are sometimes working with those organizations as well. And I don't know if anyone from Minnesota DNR has information as well.
Yeah, I guess I would just add that, you know, due to the nature of a lot of the restoration and remediation work, just the size of equipment and the type of work, you know, aquatic dredging, just that kind of precludes a lot of smaller local businesses from being able to do the work. I think there are opportunities for groups like Community Action Duluth to be involved in things like invasives control or planting. But yeah, I think, you know, maybe that third R, the revitalization component, may be the best opportunity to bring in communities. Yeah, and I'd love to see that be like a topic or theme for like a summit, or because I think we've got a lot of minds that we could get together, because I'd love to hear some ideas.
Yeah, and the Alliance is definitely working on that too, Andrew. So, and we're connected with you. So we're happy to get your ideas and things like that. And we are also always watching for opportunities, and we'll continue to do so as we, you know, whenever we get a part to play in some of these. And like Melissa was saying, there is a lot of heavy equipment required for a lot of these projects, but that doesn't mean that there isn't anything that we could bring to the communities. So we will be watching for things that we could bring to the communities, and we will definitely work with you guys, Andrew. And we do work with Community Action Duluth as well. So, and we do post jobs to different community organizations in town here. So we'll keep doing that, but we'll keep in touch with you, Andrew, and we'll keep working on that and do better.
Great, thanks for that. And Tom is curious about the monitoring of vegetation restoration at 21st Avenue West and 40th Avenue West.
Yeah, that's a Dan Brenneman question.
Yeah, where is Dan anyway?
For details, I didn't see him on, but so those two projects are led by Minnesota Pollution Control. I don't know specifics of monitoring results or what's planned, but I know under our, I can just kind of summarize a little bit that under our degraded benthos BUI, Dan is contracting with UW Superior to do a lot of the monitoring. So I believe that those sites are being monitored by UW Superior.
So
And
Tom, we can.
Tom, I think you know Dan well enough.
Yeah.
You can get some extra info if you still got questions.
Another question from Tom. He's wondering, Fred, how many years have you worked on the Tern project?
Oh, I've worked on Common Tern since the late 1970s.
That's awesome. Yeah, kudos to you for sure. All right, a question from Mike. How secure is the, might mispronounce this, is it Erie Pier? Erie Pier
Correct.
project. So how secure is that project to get underway next spring?
I think that's another Lorraine question, and she had to leave us.
Yeah, so Lorraine is the project manager for that. I mean, as far as I know, the information in our presentation is up to date. So I guess if that schedule was, I don't think we got into season details on most of them, but that information should be up to date as far as I know.
Great. All right. Scrolling down, looking for more questions. A lot of people posted some really good resources out there, so thanks for that.
We can actually read a couple of those too if you want, Beth. Real quick. I can do that.
Sure.
The Community Action Duluth was it looks like was awarded a $90,000 grant to the Stream Corps for invasive species control, and that's from Tom Hollenhorst. And I think he also put something in there about where did it go? He was giving us the lab's full name that's been changed. Oh, EPA Great Lakes Toxicology and Ecology Division. So it's now the EPA lab is now GL-TED, and it stands for EPA Great Lakes Toxicology and Ecology Division. So, okay, go ahead with the next question then.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, Aaron wants to know, does dredging up contaminants spread contaminants? The water is brown downriver from the digging area.
It's a good question. So most of the dredging you see in the river is maintenance related, navigational dredging. That type of dredging, there's pretty extensive contaminant sampling that happens before they do any of those dredge units. In general, those type of operations don't require what we call a silt curtain. You know, and there will be some turbidity, is what we call the brown water. There will be increased turbidity, just from stirring up some of the bottom sediments. Generally that has to be kept within a certain parameter. It can't get too crazy or go too far from the project site. Now, specifically in remedial projects where the contaminants are at a higher level or of concern, they will have more safeguards to limit any contaminant spread. So in some projects, and most of our projects are fairly well contained, so they're within slips or smaller type sites, and it's pretty easy to contain that turbidity with a silk curtain. And what they'll do is sometimes there'll be 2 layers depending on the project or the type of contaminant. So if it's more of a petroleum based, like a surface boom is adequate to contain any petroleum. Otherwise, if it's a contaminant that connects to the sediments in that turbidity, a silk curtain would be the one that'll stop it. So they'll come back through at the end of their project and kind of scoop up and clean along the edge of the turbidity curtain before they remove it, and that gets anything that may have settled during the project time. So what you're most likely seeing is navigational dredging in more open areas, or some of our sediment placement projects, which those sediments have been thoroughly characterized or tested previous to say the habitat projects. So hopefully that answers the question. But based on permits and contaminant levels, that is required to be contained within a remedial site.
I just wanted to mention too, just related to just monitoring the chat as well, and the question that related to the park point, like a lot of the dredge material that is used for beach nourishment or any sort of like habitat restoration project, and then Matt and Melissa, you can maybe weigh in, is heavily, it is like there's navigational dredge, and then there's dredge material that's used for habitat restoration. And so there's a lot of analysis and a lot of work that goes into making sure that these are clean dredge materials that go into the habitat restoration projects. Would you?
Sure.
Matt,
Yeah, sure. I can talk about on that one a little bit too here. So the question is, in case somebody isn't seeing it in the chat, is how do we know the beach nourishment being piped to Park Point is clean? I've heard people say they've seen trash in it and turbidity along the shore near the pipe. So I guess I don't know firsthand that area, but what I do know is that dredge area that was used for that beach nourishment project was portions of that have never been dredged. I believe that was part of the Anchorage, Duluth Anchorage areas. So it is really high quality, clean sand. Most of that material, usually there's a few layers. So there's like a kind of a top layer that contains a little more fine material. And then once you get below that, it's almost pure sand. So we still test it all. The Army Corps is in charge of testing those navigational dredge materials, and they have a certain number of tests that are required per cubic yard, and then they also have to obtain permits for beach nourishment. There's always going to be some turbidity, as we all see when it rains out and the river gets some surface water runoff, it becomes a little more turbid. That's just what happens when water and sand and sediment move together. So They do pipe it and kind of put it into a slurry and spray it along the beach or the shoreline or the habitat that we're creating. So that's the hydraulic method of placement. And they try to minimize. So there are a few what we call best management practices that minimize the size of the turbidity plume and all that. So we really want as much material to stay where we're trying to put it. It is expensive to do these projects. We do not want to pick up any more sand than we have to. We do not want our contractors on site one extra day more than we have to, because it is expensive, and we definitely are trying to get the biggest bang for our buck here. So we also have to stay within permit conditions. So there's a lot of steps in place, I will say, that go into one of these projects. It all starts with investigation and sampling, and then permitting and getting all the approvals, and setting up your best management practices. So generally what happens is it's a few years of planning and investigation and about a month of actual construction work is what these big projects come down to.
Matt, if people do see stuff, I mean, I think the best thing to do is that people need to know there is going to be turbidity. So that's normal to see some of that. But if they're really seeing garbage and things like that, who should they call?
I mean, specifically for that project, I believe the Army Corps had a specific contact.
Right.
You
guys can always call us to, or email me too, and I can hook you up to the right people. I know I've done that a few times with this project. So Melissa, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say with the pollution control agency as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the local entity, the city or whatever would know the right contact, and they usually get a lot of public contacts about any number of things. So they're a good resource, and they can definitely connect to the right people. Yep. Generally, people know those contacts a little better than the agency or the Army Corps contacts. You might know your park and rec person, or your maybe your local city councilor or something like that, and they can usually track down the right people.
Good point.
Deanna has a comment kind of to add to that about hearing questions and concerns about dredge material. And she said it might be worth putting out some communications into the community that kind of describe the process, so maybe people know what to expect. That's not a bad
idea,
suggestion.
Deanna.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, and then for a little bit more information on the Erie Pier Ponds project, Mike Bars is actually going to come on and talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to see if I can find him and pin him as well. So feel free to unmute yourself.
Oh, can't hear you, Mike.
Okay, how does that work?
And can't really hear you.
You sound a little underwater.
All right, Brian.
Oh, there you go.
Perfect.
Okay, I work with Lorraine on the ponds behind Erie Pier project, and we are proceeding as planned for 2021. Currently, we are finalizing the design. We're securing the permits. In fact, we just received one permit approval today for that project. And then we're moving on to prepare for doing the contracting. So we're on schedule for the ponds project.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, and with that, we have covered all the questions from the chat.
Thanks, Beth. Does anybody have one last question? We can take one more. If not, any final remarks from any of the coordinators at all?
Just wanted to thank everybody for joining, and I think it's really amazing that despite the challenges of this year, we were able to continue moving forward with so many of these large projects. So we ended up maybe doing more coordination from a chair than we would have liked to, but it was really still satisfying to be able to move things forward.
Thanks, Melissa. I want to thank again our coordinators, and the Alliance really is, we work really closely with all of the area concern coordinators with all the agencies, and I just want to say thanks to all your work. Just so you guys know, and I know most of you people know, the agencies and the coordinators too, but I want to say again that the coordinators for the agencies live here, they work here, they love the area, they care about the area, and so you can really count on them to be doing the right thing. And if you have questions, I know that they want to answer them for you. And so that's why we do this kind of thing, so that you can build a relationship with the people who are working on these things. So thank you again for showing up like you always show up, and good to see your faces. Those of you I see your names. It's good to all be together, at least in the same room. Hi, Deanna. And just look for more events coming your way. Look for ways that you can get involved with supporting the river, whatever way you can. And take care, be safe. And any questions that you might have, this recording will actually be posted to our website later. Hi, Andrea, see your face now. Be in touch with us if you have questions, if you don't know who the coordinators are, but you should be able to find them. And anything else that I missed? Where is Alyssa? Alyssa, thank you for helping out here. And thanks board members for showing up and being here with us. And everybody check out the SLRA videos, our Facebook page and everything else. It's one way that you can connect to the AOC process. Thanks again, Beth, for your expertise and helping us get through a few little technical glitches. And thank you, presenters. And we will see you next time. Have a good evening.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Bye. Andrea has one more thing. She says, if construction restoration projects are big, there might be a City of Superior or Duluth stormwater permit. So you could call the Superior Stormwater if there's something going on there that you have questions for. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good job,
Good
Matt.
night.
Bye.